Let's just take you out of the equation for a minute. Let's take achievement out of the equation for a minute, success out of the equation for a minute, goals out of the equation for a minute, just so you can rest in your own being. And these texts and these teachings are about teaching you to settle into that being, rest in that being, right? Rather than being the human becoming, right? And instead reside as the human being, right? So we're often aligned with the human becoming. We're very comfortable with that because of the achievement-based society, because we like to become something. We're on a certain path. We like to have purpose and this and that, and not that is totally negative, but it only plays a certain public utility, right? It's got nothing to do about understanding the true nature of your being. Whereas Eastern spirituality and philosophy is about, pulling the rug from under that way of thinking so that you can rest in your being and get comfortable there, right? And so rather than getting comfortable with being a creation of the social mentality, right? So Eastern philosophy is about bringing you back to your natural state of mind, and your natural state of mind that is not geared on being a high producer, right? Doesn't care about achievement, doesn't care about success, doesn't need positive reinforcement from others, social approval, because you can rest in your being. And this is why I've been telling people for years in teaching Eastern philosophy that if you understand this, you kind of are immune from that type of insane social psychology, because you don't need anymore. You don't need social approval. You don't need positive reinforcement. You're okay to rest in your own being. You don't really care what's in it for you, because you've started to take yourself out of the equation, right? And so the problem with, as you were mentioning, with Bikram and all of these strange, practices and that came about with New Age spirituality, is that when you have a "what's in it for me" mentality in New Age spirituality, old habits die hard. Like you see these old habits reveal themselves in the people because they still have a "what's in it for me" mentality. Where Eastern spirituality and philosophy is about, in a sense, eliminating the person so that the true nature of yourself can shine forth. And so there is not anymore this question of what's in it for me, because you've already settled into your being and you're resting in your being and allowing the world to be as it will be, and could care less what people think of you. You don't even, if you don't succeed in life, like succeed in air quotes, right, in the social sphere, it's not the end of the world. As long as you've aligned with that ultimate reality, you've rested in that understanding and continue to sort of marinate your mind in the knowledge, in the texts, in the practices, in the philosophy. That's what gives you real freedom in this life, rather than thinking that freedom is at the end of a journey of achievement or success.
I think a lot of people find it difficult to just be, like you said, that beingness, because everyone is somewhat addicted to doing too many things, right? And in the name of productivity, whatever that means. But people are addicted to doing things, and we become doers, right? So, and if we don't do anything, we feel anxious because we haven't learned how to be. Instead, we are just looking to be productive, right? So, that's something that we need to remember, that we are addicted to doing too many things, and we are geared towards that sort of a mentality, so that we forget to sit back and enjoy life, right? And that beingness and the productivity is actually obviously they don't go together, right? No. If you just be and sit back and enjoy life, there is no productivity in that sense. But in a way, you just completely remain as your true self, and when you can just exist and just be, that itself is actually achieving the beyond what productivity really means, right? And that's something people don't appreciate, anymore because we live in too much of a fast lifestyle, and a lot of people live on the phone a lot. We are swimming in too much of an influx of information, and we want to catch up with everything, which is completely unnatural to us. And we know that 99.9% of the information out there that we don't really need to know about, right?
No.
And we don't appreciate that just to be bored. You know, actually, a lot of philosophers and artists speak highly about being bored. You know, because when we're bored, like instead of seeking not to be bored, if you can just remain as bored, then actually in that boredom we find we meet life, we face with reality, if you choose to see it that way, right? So in that boredom, somewhat organically you get inspired to do something, but again, do something not for anything, just for the sake of doing whatever that activity they choose to do, right?
Yep.
So that we need to slowly move away from that, a lot of a doing mentality. But again, I think it's not that difficult once you practice it. You know, you voluntarily choose not to be on social media too much, you know, and instead of doing that, you find some other hobby, or just cleaning your room, your house and whatnot. These things can help, and you just change your speed of your life a bit slower, then it'll be we will find much more pleasure and joy being in that moment of just being.
Yeah. If we miss the news one day, what really changes in your life? I don't think people really think about it, right? Like, you know, embracing boredom, embracing just being in their life, embracing sort of like the emptiness of their life rather than filling it full of information and noise, because that's all that is, right? If information, news is information, right? Social media is information. And so you've got all of this very surface level knowledge, let's say, that people are dining out on every day, which doesn't contribute to any peace and equanimity, and actually agitates people and makes people more angry, right? You only have to look at the hate online to understand what that has done. And obviously social media companies take no responsibility in what's happened to the human psychology over the last 15 years. But human beings have changed dramatically on a psychological level over 15 years because of comment culture, because of what, you know, seriously, right? Because people think they can speak to each other in a way with anonymity, because that's what the online world, that's what's promoted on the online world. But in reality, if you're doing that, you get a slap in the face. And so I'm a proponent that the online world should be a reflection of the real world, and that shouldn't actually be a thing. I would actually have no problem if there was no comment section at all. I mean, because it wouldn't matter to me. But so people got to think about that, right? You've got the surface level information. They're attracted to the news, they're attracted to this and that, but nothing literally changes in your life if you miss a day or two. You just look at your own life, nothing happens, right? And so, as you were saying, in some sense, beingness doesn't, resting in your being may not contribute to, being successful in society. Not many sadhus own Fortune 500 companies, obviously, but you'll know yourself, right? And there's something you can't put a price tag on. You can't value that with a monetary value. And so the problem in a sort of a soulless world that we've created due to hyper productivity and achievement is that type of intrinsic spiritual value disappears.
That's right.
And so then we're left with just this empty world where the amount of attention you can garner is the superpower. But the real superpower is actually what the sadhus embody, what the sages embodied, right? And I always come back to that quote that Richard Wilhelm said in the introduction of the I Ching, where he said that a lot of people will look at sages and sadhus and criticize them for doing nothing, but but them living in the mountains and away from society actually subtly creates incomparable human values for the future, because they embodied that spiritual knowledge. And we don't speak about a businessman from 2,500 years ago, but we speak about Gautama the Buddha.
That's
right. And so you have to remember, back in Gautama's time, hardly anyone would have even knew him, right? Because India was obviously a lot smaller in population at that time. And if you lived in Tamil Nadu, you would have never even heard of Buddha or the birth of Buddhism. It would have took, probably hundreds of years to sort of filter out from Bihar, right? And so I just think people, they sort of don't think about things clearly in that way. And so it really comes down to, a point in time where you've got to make a decision, like what's more valuable to you, understanding your actual true nature and understanding these heightened philosophies at a deep level, or are you going to invest your whole life into making money, being a high earner, a high achiever? And the ironic thing is that when you see someone who's really rich, for example, and they've become rich, they've become successful and famous and this and that, it's an empty endeavor. And so what do they end up doing? They end up turning towards the spiritual teachings. You see people all the time, right? Rich people will turn to Vedanta. They look to knowledge to give them answers, right? And so this is very common, but in an achievement-based society, people think that it's very important. I need to make money. I need to be successful. I need to get approval from others. And this is all an empty endeavor. It's not that you don't need money. Everyone needs money, and there's nothing actually inherently evil or wrong with that. But the problem becomes that money becomes the primary motivation in all of life, right? Why are you making that decision? Because of money. Why did you do that? Because of money. Why didn't you do that? Because I wanted to save money. You know what I mean? Like, so it becomes the primary driver, which then eliminates your actual rich experience of life.